Breaking news this afternoon, the union representing Las Vegas police officers spoke hours ago about the case involving the deadly shooting of Brandon Durham inside his own home. This comes after News 3 first reported that a Clark County grand jury issued a no bill for Officer Alexander Bookman. Bookman's attorney says the grand jury agreed that Bookman did not have criminal intent behind his actions after being presented the evidence to the case. Body cam video you were just looking at showed Bookman entering a home and shooting Brandon Durham in November. He thought Durham was the aggressor in the case. Durham is the guy who called 911 asking for help after someone identified as Alejandra Boudreaux allegedly broke into his house. Las Vegas Police Protective Association held a news conference this morning and said Officer Bookman did not commit a crime.
We hear so often, police officers are never charged, never convicted of crimes, and that is because officers are doing their job. We may disagree with their tactics, how they perform their job, but officers don't put on their badge and decide that they're going to go out and kill someone.
So you heard from David Roger. He was a two-term Clark County District Attorney back in the day, about 20 years ago. Now he is the lead attorney for the Police Protective Association. By the way, Durham's family has filed a civil lawsuit against Officer Bookman and the Metro Police Department, so this is not the last we've heard of it. All right, joining us now is the reporter that broke this story yesterday, Kristen Drummond. You did a great job on that. And thanks for joining us now to talk more about this case. You've been covering this since the very beginning. So how did Bookman's attorney, David Roger, in essence, the head of the Las Vegas Police Protective Association Attorney Division, how did he present the case? What was his message this morning?
Well, this briefing lasted more than an hour.
Wow.
Yep, and he went through this case step by step, really trying to break down what was happening. So as you've mentioned, Roger is not only Bookman's attorney, he is also the attorney for Metro Police's union, and he seemed to characterize this whole event as a domestic violence situation instead of a break-in. He says Bookman was not shooting to kill, but to stop a threat, and saying that the threat in the moment was Durham in Bookman's perspective. Now, we don't know why he's saying that, but that is what he is saying the perspective is of actually Bookman in this case. Okay,
so the key to the case here, Kristen, as you well know, but I want to outline it for everybody who's watching. Durham is the man inside his own home, and he's in underwear.
Yeah, that is correct.
And police say that Alejandra Boudreaux is the person who is attacking him with a knife. So Boudreaux would be on the left in the surveillance video, Durham on the right, and Bookman comes into the situation and has to make an instant decision on how to stop the threat.
We're talking split seconds decisions, because he entered that home and then less than 15 seconds, he fired that first round and then followed it up with 5 additional shots. Now, Roger says Bookman sees Durham, as I mentioned, as the aggressor in the situation, pointing that Bookman suspects Durham is holding the knife by Boudreaux's throat. But we know they were struggling over a knife, and Boudreaux broke into the home. Roger says Durham did not obey the officer's commands to drop the knife in those really 2 seconds, emphasizing that meth, the methamphetamine, which was found in Durham's system during an autopsy, likely impacted Durham's judgment, including the command to drop the weapon.
He was the one who called 911. He was the one who knew that police officers were going to respond. Did the methamphetamine, because he was high on meth, affect his ability to understand? Was he truly the aggressor at the time and wasn't going to drop the knife? What we do know is he did not drop the knife, and Officer Bookman had to make a decision to save someone's life.
Of course, that decision, we're talking basically 2 seconds, Dana. I mean, he says, drop the knife, and then you hear the gun go off. Of course, Durham's family accuses Bookman of not de-escalating the situation. And I asked Roger why Durham didn't recognize Durham, because he also...
Bookman. Why didn't Bookman recognize Durham?
Exactly, because Bookman responded to the house the night before,
right.
And he interacted with
Isn't that
Boudreaux
amazing? The
and
same
Durham.
Officer, Bookman, was at that same house the night before and interacted with Durham and Alejandra Boudreaux. The same characters were all involved 24 hours prior to the shooting.
And what Roger is telling me is that it's irrelevant. It does not matter that he interacted with them the night before. It's the fact of the matter. He's saying it's his perspective that he saw a knife that was near the throat of Boudreaux, and he's assuming that Durham is the aggressor in this situation. Like I mentioned, he's characterizing it like a domestic violence scenario, but we do know Boudreaux was not invited to the home. Boudreaux broke into the home. So I also have been asking questions about, well, what should the public think about this, especially if you're calling police for help, if you have an intruder in your home? Well, Roger is saying you got to listen to the officer's commands. When they say drop the knife, drop the knife. But again, we're talking a split
Was Durham holding the knife?
decision.
I thought it was Boudreaux holding the knife.
Well, according to Roger, what they're saying, investigators only found Durham's DNA on the knives and not Boudreaux's.
I had not heard that before.
So we found that out today. But again, when you look at that video, it appears that they are both struggling over that knife. And yes, he does mention that there is meth in Durham's system, saying that may have impacted his ability to respond to the officer's commands. But still, nonetheless,
interesting.
You got to remember, Boudreaux was not invited into the home, and she returned to the home.
They did have a relationship. Boudreaux and Durham had a previous relationship.
They did.
But he wanted to break it off, and she didn't.
Well, remember, Durham bought a plane ticket for Boudreaux to leave. And that was
to get out of town.
To get out of town, to leave. And remember also, Boudreaux returned to the house because that plane ticket was canceled. And today, Roger mentioned that Boudreaux, when she got to the house, saw Durham with another woman. And that may have escalated the situation.
The whole thing. Okay, so we did reach out to the current Clark County DA, Steve Wolfson. We have a response from him. We wanted to read that to you this afternoon. I think it was initially Wolfson was recommending charges against Alexander Bookman in this case.
I wouldn't say charges, wanted to take it to the grand jury.
Wanted to take it to the grand jury. So he presented this lengthy statement that says, in part, ultimately the grand jury disagreed with our assessment and returned a no bill in this matter. As an essential part of our system of justice, grand juries sometimes disagree with prosecutors. When they do, we respect their decisions as they are the considered opinions of everyday members of our community who are faithfully performing their civic duty. So that's the response from our current DA, Steve Wolfson. And remember, this thing is ever changing. It's now going to a civil trial, presumably. We're going to have the latest on this. Kristen will be all over this story on later editions of News 3.